of years. I won't even start naming all of the things we have done together because we be that take up the whole time that we have. But we're happy to have him here with us. We wish him all the best in his run for governor. We are supporting him in his campaign for governor of Maryland. Joining us now, the former president and CEO of the NAACP, Ben Jealous. Ben, good morning, my brother. How are you this morning?
Hey, good morning, Mark. I'm doing well. It is wonderful to be back on the air with you, man.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. How's the campaign going?
Good, man. Good. We have surged in support. We're now tied for first and clearly one of the front runners in this race. And um, it's I think the part that's probably most affirming to me is that we started off with a real kind of simple theory, which is that we could do now what Doug Wilder did then, David Dinkins did then, Harold Washington did then, and actually build a coalition of working people of every color, from every region of the state, from every religion, based on our mutual desire to move our families forward on core kitchen table issues. And so, if you look now, like if we're not running second in a region of the state, we're running first, and that includes it in the rural areas, because everybody is just ready to finally fully fund our schools. Everybody is ready to know that their neighbors have health care and that the costs are under control. And the only way to do that is to move to single payer, and we're the only campaign that's put a plan for state-based Medicare for all on the table. And everybody's ready to end mass incarceration, feel safer, and end the student debt crisis. And we're the only ones out here really talking about the fact that we can be safer and shrink our prisons. That we can, and that if we shrink our prisons, we'll have more money to invest in public higher education.
You also, Ben, are unveiling a great cities plan, correct?
Yeah, and we're doing that this week. It's the third anniversary of the uprisings, which were centered in Sandtown and in Upton, where my mom grew up, and where my family is still rooted. And we started off with a Baltimore strategy, but as you travel across the state, what you see is that you know Cumberland, which used to be the second largest city in the state, is like Baltimore in miniature and in film negative. Whatever dysfunction you see in black in Baltimore, you can find in white in Cumberland, and it's hurting. That you get up on a mountain and you look at the city and you see that probably 20% of it has been lost to trees, just taking over vacant areas in this forested region of Western Maryland. And so we decided to put on the plan, to put on the table, not just a plan to revive Baltimore, but also to revive Cumberland, to revive Salisbury, and all the other smaller cities in between.
So, tell us about that plan. How would you do that?
And at the core is unleashing entrepreneurship, by one, making it easier for our people of color owned businesses, our veteran owned businesses, our women owned businesses to really flourish. We're a state where you know women are half the state and people of color are 48.5% of the state, and yet our governor launched a $200 million new industry, medical cannabis, and excluded both
Hmm.
women-owned businesses and people of color-owned businesses basically entirely from ownership. Um, it's like a 19th century approach to a 21st century opportunity, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so really, but here's the thing: in the state that's half women and basically half people of color, our big goal is 29% of the contracts go to women-owned businesses and people of color-owned businesses, which, when those two groups together are like 75% of the population, starts to feel more like a cap, than an audacious goal. And so we really break down how we will, end the discrimination, but also empower businesses by making it easier for them. Frankly, businesses of all types of ownership, making it easier for them to access the funds they need when they need it to grow. If you stand in West Baltimore during the uprisings, as I did and as I do, it's where my church is, it's where my family's rooted, and you look around, what you see is we have real shortages of public services. Schools are underfunded, shortages in nonprofit service delivery. What we don't have a shortage of is small businesses. What they're struggling with is a lack of access to credit. So we put a plan on the table for getting them the credit they need sooner than having to wait till you have 2 years of tax returns, because so many of them that would otherwise be viable die in that window. We focus on, frankly, better connecting the young people of our state to the job opportunities that exist. It's easy. I just got my 19-year-old nephew out of my basement. It's easy to feel like there's a shortage of jobs for our young people. Then you stop and you realize, Mark, wait, I have all these friends, all these neighbors who moved here from other places for great job opportunities here. And what you quickly see is that Maryland imports literally people for everything: construction managers, teachers, welders, nurses, doctors, truckers, programmers. Like, it doesn't matter. We're importing them. And so we really focus on flipping that and solving the fact that we have a shortage of our young people that we've trained for the good jobs that we have, and solving that by building apprenticeship programs and embedding them into our high schools. Solving that by creating a more dynamic relationship between industry and between public education at every level. So we're turning our schools back into the fattest pipeline of talent into every industry that we have. And then finally, we talk about really doubling down on the fact that Tech for Good has been good for Maryland, that we're a state that flourishes because of our health sciences industry, but it's fallen from third in the country to somewhere in the bottom half of the top 10. We got to get back to being third in the country. We talk about it really building on our strength, as Freeman Hrabowski has at UMBC, as a hub for cybersecurity in this time when cybersecurity is critical, literally, to the future of our democracy and the future of the world. And we also talk about the fact that our state has a greater will to solve the climate crisis than any state in our region. And so we could be, and we should be, building factories across the state to produce wind turbines, as we've started to do in the Baltimore region. But we could be doing that across the state, to produce more solar technologies. And so that's really the vision that we're fundamentally, our cities are about the entrepreneurs in those cities. Right? That really is what's defined its wealth. And we've got to make those opportunities really open the door to women, to veteran-owned businesses, to people of color-owned businesses. That as we're doing that, we've got to make sure that the jobs we're creating, our young people actually have access to by better gearing their training towards career and connecting them to the jobs that are here. And then we point out that we have a lot of room for growth. That even though we're seen as a relatively prosperous state, there's even more wealth to create here if we focus on the strengths of Maryland to get our Tech for Good, but also the fact that we have one of the most inclusive tech economies in the country. In the Silicon Valley, they struggle to get 2% of their programmers to be black these days. We're at almost 20%. And so on Thursday, I'll have tech leaders here from the Valley looking at Maryland as a place, including Baltimore, as a place to build expansion campuses so that they can diversify their staff more quickly.
Ben Jealous, folks, laying out his vision for the state of Maryland. Of course, Ben, you have been an activist, an organizer, and that's an outstanding plan as well because we know people think of. Let me say this first of all. People think of Maryland, unfortunately, like they do a lot of states. A lot of states are defined by one or two big or almost big cities. And so a lot of times when people think of Maryland, they think of Baltimore, they think of PG County, they think of Annapolis probably. But you just talked about some of the other cities in Maryland, some of the other areas that really can't afford to be neglected. I can't help but imagine that is resonating with voters all over the state.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing: we love our cities,
Yeah.
and Baltimore has a diaspora. I'm part of it. I know how proud we are. I live out in Pasadena, Maryland, and the thing I have in common, even with the Republicans here, is that all of our families go back to Baltimore. We love the city, we love the teams, and the city, and we want to see the city revived. Well, then all of a sudden you start listening to people, you realize Cumberland has a diaspora, Salisbury has a diaspora, and folks carry that. I was with JHD's right hand guy, Emory Jones, and he comes from a small city on the Eastern Shore, and we were talking about his city and how he wants to see it revived. So we decided to speak to that across the state. But one of the proudest moments for me in this race so far, because I've in addition to being president of the NAACP, I've spent the last 4 or 5 years in investing in tech companies, and my firm we're invested in 150 startups, and 68% of them have a Black, Latino, or female founder. We run literally 10x above the level of inclusion at your average Silicon Valley investment fund, and so I get the Maynard Jackson question, and the other front runners in this race are both county execs, and the Maynard Jackson question is, well, somebody always asks kind of like very bluntly, well, can you name any Black millionaires that you've created? and it was way easier for me to answer that question than these county execs, and that kind of blew me away, because these county, both Baltimore County and Prince George's counties have large Black populations, and thriving, thriving Black-owned businesses, as they do, thriving business people of every color, and the report I got back was that the county execs were stumped, and for me, I was like, yeah, let me just kind of walk you through them, And by the way, I can name the white millionaires I've helped create, the women millionaires I've helped create, the Latino millionaires. In fact, our fastest growing company, get this, Mark, she's all three. She's an Afro-Dominicana.
Right.
And so, and the crazy thing is that I can literally point you to one of the big leaders of the Silicon Valley who said, who met her, was blown away, and then wrote an article without mentioning her name saying, oh, it's a shame, but if you have an accent, you just can't raise money in the Valley. And now all of his peers have literally been tripping over themselves trying to invest in her company. We were her sole institutional investor for, I think, 3 years, maybe 4, as we helped her build that company. And then when it began to take off, I mean, like nothing we've ever seen, all of a sudden, all of Sand Hill Road, which is the Wall Street of Silicon Valley, was fighting to get into her company. And I had to remind a guy quietly, I was like, well, your boss, like 4 years ago, met her, fell in love with her vision for her business, and then had the gall to write an op-ed based on that, not saying this is why we should support her, but it's sad that she's going to fail because she has an accent.
Yeah.
Like that's the foolishness that we're still dealing with. People like passing that off as like some sort of financial science. You know? And
it's insane. Ben Jealous, folks, is running for governor of Maryland, and this will not be the last time we speak with our brother. We want to try to speak to him on a regular basis, just in terms of some logistics. Ben, what's primary day? When's the primary?
Primary is June 26th. Early vote starts June 14th and runs to June 21.
Okay.
And so it's time for folks to start tuning in. You know, we've got an opportunity here to really get our families back to moving forward, no matter what Donald Trump does in Washington. But we've got to starts by really recognizing that the path to take back our country starts with taking back our states.
You have been endorsed by Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, and Cory Booker, haven't you?
Yep. And we were just endorsed by 74,000 educators across the state. And we've been endorsed by all the communication workers and the postal workers and all the nurses, and every environmental group so far, and almost every progressive group so far, including Progressive Maryland. I mean, we now have an army of members of the groups that have endorsed us in Maryland that far exceeds the vote total that we'll need to win.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's been our approach. I believe that personnel is policy, and I've just hired a bunch of organizers. Very diverse range of organizers, and it's been going very well.
Of course, folks, it goes without saying I'm endorsing him, but so there's no confusion. I am endorsing Ben Jealous for governor of Maryland. The state, the governor's mansion is in Republican hands now. Maryland is a blue state, so something's wrong with that. Let's be very, very practical about this. And we need to return the governor's mansion to Democratic hands. Ben Jealous is from Maryland. His family's from Maryland. His mother's from Baltimore, an activist in NAACP when she was a young person. We invite you to go to the website, benjealous.com. Ben, you need some money, man, or you good?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm most proud of, Ben, is that we don't just have more low-dollar donors than any other campaign. We have more than all of them put together, including the sitting governor. We decided early on that we were not going to take money from business. The other folks I'm running against, and the governor himself, roughly half of their donations come from big business. Mm-hmm. Means it's 99% from individuals, and then less than 1% split between some small businesses and some trade unions. So this campaign lives or dies literally on the will of the people. And if folks like what they heard this morning, please go to benjealous.com and join our army of working families, working, struggling, striving people who are just investing whatever they can afford in taking back our state.
Indeed. Ben Jealous, ladies and gentlemen, go to the website if you would, benjealous.com, and give. And again, Ben, this will not be prayerfully the last time we talk. Let's talk many, many more times leading up to June the 26th, every soul to the polls in Maryland. Thank you, my brother.
All right. Appreciate you, Mark.
Appreciate you, too. Always a pleasure, man. And anything else I can do to help online or offline, just let me know, okay?
All right.
Absolutely. Thank you. Ben Jealous, folks, running for governor of Maryland. benjealous.com. Going to take a quick break. The National Memorial for Peace and Justice opens in Montgomery day after tomorrow. When we come back, Brian Stevenson of the Equal Justice Initiative is going to tell us all about it. It is amazing. Don't go away. Sirius XM Progress 127 Resistance Radio. Get woke, get ready for impeachment. This is MIP.
Breaking up big rocks on a chain gang.